so excited to have all of you here, all of you watching. You are about to see a taped version of a dramatic presentation of a play called Flowers Aren't Enough. And after the show, we are going to stay on to answer questions, to have a discussion with a wonderful panelist, Rabbi Stephen Carr-Rubin and Judy Vaughn. So enjoy the show, stay after for the discussion. If what you see in this show is making you feel anxious or triggering memories or feels like something that you have experienced, we invite you to call numbers that are going to be on the chat and to speak up and have your voice heard, because that's what tonight is about. So thank you for being here and enjoy Flowers Aren't Enough.
He brought me flowers. I haven't seen him or spoken to him in months, and he brought me flowers. I own a flower shop, and he still insists on bringing me flowers. That's how it all began. He used to show up at my doorstep and bring me huge bouquets of flowers. Here, these are for you. In my entire life, no one had paid so much attention to me. But for that attention, there was a price to be paid, a price that I noticed only many years later. It started with my clothing. This was quite a few years ago, and he used to look at me and say, "Why is your skirt so short? And your shirt? Does the entire world need to see your belly button?" That was the way that I liked to dress, and it didn't seem like such a big deal to dress a little bit differently. He then used to look at me and he would say, "You're so beautiful. You don't need makeup." And I stopped with the makeup. And in the course of a few short months, my life took a turn from the direction that they were going in. I stopped working at this part-time job that I had. I stopped hanging out with my girlfriends. And I stopped dancing in this Israeli dance group that I was a part of so that I could be with him. Now, he didn't make me do these things. He didn't yell at me. He convinced me. And it was so wonderful to let somebody make decisions for me that I didn't notice that slowly he was taking over my life. But I was in love. I was blinded by love. Love. Isn't love amazing? My parents didn't really like him. But to me, he was Prince Charming. He was tall, dark, handsome, a law student. I mean, this was every Jewish mother's wet dream, and everything I could possibly wish for. I mean, this guy was amazing. Even though I had reservations, there were these little red lights that had gone off and on that I decided to ignore. Like one time, I fell asleep at my sister's house and got to his house about an hour after we had made up. When I walked in the door, he was furious. "What is your problem? I have been sitting here and waiting for you, you stupid fat cow!" I thought that was a little bit out of hand. I mean, I was just 1 hour late. But you know something? He didn't yell at me for no reason. He yelled because he was waiting for me. And I have to say that there was something a little bit flattering about the fact that someone would get so angry because I was late. There was another time where we were stuck in a traffic jam. And suddenly he turned his head to me and he said, "We're stuck here in this traffic jam because of you, just because of you." "Because of me? What did I do?" "Shut up!" There was nothing flattering about that. That's ridiculous. I'm sitting in the car just like him. I mean, no. So he yelled a little bit. What's the big deal? I mean, this is the man that I am going to marry. And I wanted so badly to get married. And I was positive that the minute we'd get married, everything would be okay. No, everything would be perfect. we would live happily ever after, like in the fairy tales. So we had this huge wedding, and not long ago I was looking through the photo album from my wedding, and suddenly I realized that I'm not in touch with any of the people that were at my wedding. The first time that he hit me was on our wedding night. We went to this fancy hotel, and I left my sandals outside the bathroom door. And he went in to take a shower, and he came out, and he tripped over them and stubbed his toe. "You stupid idiot! Can you think of anybody but yourself?" I was in a complete state of shock. In my entire life, no one had ever raised a hand on me before, ever. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to." What? What? He just slapped you, and you're apologizing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Ugh, there is nothing more annoying than stubbing your toe. There is nothing more humiliating than being slapped on your wedding night. And I started to cry, and he came over to me, and he touched my cheek, and he touched my hair, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, baby, oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I don't know what happened. I love you. I love you more than I love myself. I'd never hurt you. It's okay. This is nothing, nothing." We had been married for 5 hours. My wedding dress was draped over the chair in the corner of the room. What was I supposed to do? 5 hours ago, we were singing and dancing and drinking. Drinking. Of course. Of course. That's what happened. He got drunk. I mean, come on. What happened here? Nothing. I mean, this is the beginning of our journey together. And it is going to be such a wonderful journey. I don't need to make a big deal out of this. I don't need to make a big deal out of it. Shh. After we got married, the two of us were going to graduate school. I was studying sociology, and he was a law student. Now, I'm the first to say and admit that sociology is not law. You go to law school, you finish, and you become a lawyer. You study sociology, and you have many options, but that was okay. I was perfectly happy with what I was studying. But he would constantly put me down and make fun of me. What is this sociology? I mean, what are you going to be? I'm telling you, it is such a waste of time and money, this rubbish that you are studying. And I would take it in, and I would listen to him, and I would really just prefer it if he would hit me. I would wait for him just to hit me. I would almost say to him, it would be on the tip of my tongue, "Just hit me already, hit me!" Because words hurt so much more than any physical blow. When somebody hits you, you know exactly where the pain is. There's a black and blue mark. And when the black and blue mark goes away, you can pretend it was never there. But words go deep down into your soul, to a place that you cannot see. And it fills you up until your entire inside is burning with pain. If you're not careful, words can kill. People said about him that he is amazing, that he is going to make it to the Supreme Court. And when we would be sitting in the cafeteria, I would constantly be stressed out. Am I okay? Am I dressed okay? Is he going to make a scene in front of our friends? And when we would get home, he would look at me and he would say, "You are so stupid. You should just keep your mouth shut around my friends, you stupid cow." And I started to feel like going to school was useless, and I left. And after I left school, the violence escalated. And as the violence escalated, I somehow became silent. Now, you might be asking, why didn't you get up and leave? Why did you stay with him? Well, it wasn't that simple. You know, we had a mortgage to pay, we owned a home, a joint bank account, and everybody knew us. Everybody thought we were this wonderful, in-love couple. And that wasn't a lie. We were very much in love. And sometimes he was amazing. He would come home and tell me the funniest jokes. I'd never met anyone with a sense of humor like his. He would make me laugh so hard, my stomach would hurt. And it was as if there was this one man who was a good man and a second man who was a violent man. And I said to myself, concentrate. Concentrate on the good guy, and you'll see, magic will come. And the violent man, he'll just disappear. But unfortunately, in real life, there's no magic. And if you have a problem and you ignore it, it doesn't go away. It just gets bigger and bigger. And these were not two different men. This was one man. One man. I once saw this advertisement for a competition in short stories, and I decided that I'm gonna try my luck. So I sat down and I started writing a short story. When he came home from work, he caught me in the corner of his eye, sitting next to the computer. What are you doing? What are you doing? How many times have I told you not to touch the computer? I sweat. It's okay. I'm just writing a story. What do you mean you're writing a story? What the hell do you mean that you know, I know how to use the computer. I did save. I took out the disk. You do not know anything. What the hell do I... Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. You're hurting me. Stop it. Stop it. Stop. When I got to the hospital, they put me in a little room on the side, and they told me that the social worker will be in a minute. I don't need a social worker, but they sent her in anyway. This beautiful woman came into the room. What happened? Would you like me to call the police? Police? I don't need the police. This isn't what you're thinking, really. This is not what you're thinking. How do you know what I'm thinking? It became very quiet in the room. And in the silence, all I could hear was his voice saying, if you tell anyone, I will kill you. I am a lawyer, and you're nothing. He wasn't in the room. He wasn't even in the hospital. He was sitting miles away at home. And all I could hear was his voice threatening me and paralyzing me. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? And then the social worker came really close to me, and she put a piece of paper in my hand. And on the piece of paper, it said Iris and a phone number. And she closed my hand, and she looked at me and she said, if you want to talk, I believe you. If you want to talk, I'm here. You do not need to be alone. So speak up. Speak up. I lost the piece of paper that night, but the words that she said to me, I remembered. When I got home, he was crying. He cried when he saw the bruises and the stitches and the cast. He cried and he cried and he begged for forgiveness. Oh, baby, Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This is the last time. This is never going to happen again. Please, please, please don't leave me. If you leave me, I will die. If you leave me, I'll kill myself. I have no life without you. Please forgive me. I'm begging you. Forgive me. Please, please forgive me. Please. And, I forgave him. I forgave him because I believed him. I believed that this was the last time. I believed in the power of my forgiveness, that I would forgive him and I could change everything. I wanted so badly to be a good person, an optimistic person. And I was positive that this is the last time, that it will not happen again. But it happened. It happened again and again and again and again. One day, after a really big fight, he sent me the hugest bouquet of flowers. And I got this idea. I said, hey, I love flowers, and there's this little shop for rent in the neighborhood. I know. I am going to open a flower shop. When he got home from work, he was a lot less excited about my wonderful idea. I ain't giving you a penny. That's okay. You know, the neighbor, she wants to be like a silent partner, and I was thinking, and if you fall, you will fall alone. Alone. Do you hear me? And I thought that that was kind of funny. He's threatening me to be alone. Is there a place more lonely than where I'm at? I am the queen of loneliness. That's okay. I can do it by myself. Really. Let me just show you that I can, okay? Let me just show you, please. It wasn't easy, but I opened a small flower shop in the neighborhood, and my flower shop started to be successful, and things kind of calmed down. But the ceasefire was short, and after a while, the violence just escalated and went out of control. And he would yell at me and scream and get angry. You absolutely disgust me. You and your stinking flower shop. Shut up and don't even dare answer me. And you should be thankful that I give you the time of day, because no one would even look in the direction of a cow like you. How could it be that he is talking to me like that? You know, I was the queen of my class. I had such a big mouth. I could answer anyone. I come from such a good family. And look what's happened to me. Look what has happened to me. I have become nothing. Nothing. And why? Why didn't anybody ever tell me about this? Why didn't anybody ever warn me? Why didn't anybody ever say to me, hey, if you meet a guy like that, it's not your fault. You're not to blame. Speak up. Say something. No, excuse me. Because where I come from, the bad things, the things that we don't want to know about, we shove them underneath the carpet. And it doesn't matter if you cannot take one step on that carpet because of the mountains and hills of secrets and lies that people push underneath. He's been unemployed for 6 months. Shh, tuck, 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 underneath the carpet. And what about her? She's 25 years old and she's not married. Shh, underneath the carpet. And they have been married for 10 years. What's their problem? Don't they want to have children? Underneath the carpet, because what you do not talk about does not happen. What you do not talk about does not happen. I was lost. You know, I had always been such a good girl. What do I need to do to make this stop? Who do I need to be? Who do I need to be to just make this stop? And then it dawned on me. Of course, a mother, the ultimate role for a woman, motherhood. If we have a child together, then we'll be a real family and everything will be okay. It was as if I had found the key to the secret room. And I got pregnant. A few months ago, I had an exceptionally good week at the store. I made a ton of money. And I decided that I'm going to surprise him, that I'm going to tell him about the money and about the fact that I'm expecting. I couldn't wait to see his face when I would say to him, hey, I made all this money and we're gonna have a baby. So let's just forget everything that's happened and let's start a clean page, okay? Okay. My heart would stop beating just from the thought of that conversation. But that conversation never happened. It never happened because he went to the bank and he found out before I had a chance to tell him. And when he came home, he was absolutely furious. Furious. The entire bank knows. I'll bet you the entire city knows that you are making more money than me. What's your problem, huh? I'm not good enough for you? I'm not good enough for you, huh? And he absolutely lost it. He was livid. He was screaming and yelling and breaking furniture and windows and cursing and hitting. And the worst part was that he kicked me in the stomach and threw me down on the floor. And I was lying there on the floor and I looked at him and I said, I thought I was doing something good. Since when did you start to think, huh? And he walked out the door and slammed it behind him. And I was lying there on the floor, surrounded by broken glass and broken furniture. And I was lying there on the floor and I thought, you're an idiot. I thought to myself, you're an idiot. You wanted to bring a child to the world with a man like him? Look at how he is behaving. And how on earth would you explain to that child that you stayed with him? And what if he would hurt the child? Enough, I thought. Enough. I am going to stop this. Not him, me, right now. And somehow I picked myself up and I dragged myself into the bathroom. And in the bathroom, I took his razor blade. I took his razor blade and I looked straight into the mirror. I looked into the mirror and I smiled. I smiled and I thought, this is going to be so easy compared to what I have already suffered. And you know, it really was easy. All I had to do was pick that razor blade up and go 1 and 2. When I woke up in the hospital, it was dark outside, and the first rays of sunshine were coming through my window, and there was this beautiful illuminated light, and that light was calling out my name, and that light said, come, come. And I could almost touch the light. I could almost touch that light, and I thought, it's over. It's over. Me and my baby have moved on to the next world. I've won. It's over. Ugh. And then I heard my mother's voice in back of me, and I knew if my mother's here, I'm not in the next world. I'm definitely still in this world. And if she's here, it sure ain't over. It is just beginning. Michali, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you get up and leave? Why didn't you get help? Why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't you tell Daddy? Why? Why is it that in the end, everybody knows how to ask all the right questions? And why is it so impossible during the situation when something is going on, nobody has one tiny answer? My father, he stood on the side and he was in a complete state of shock. Michalinka, we're right here behind you. Don't worry. Daddy, I have a wonderful father and I love him very much. But that's true, Daddy. You used to always look at me and say, Michalinka, mamale, do you always have to have such a big mouth? Boys don't like it when the girls are smarter than them. Come on, sweetheart, be a good girl or you're going to be an old maid. But most of all, Daddy, most of all, you used to look at us and you used to say, what you get in life, that is what you deserve. That's what you deserve. And that is so, so untrue because no one, and it really doesn't matter what they have done, no one deserves this. Daddy, tell me that I'm right. Tell me that no one could possibly deserve this. A few months went by, and suddenly he showed up at my doorstep. He showed up at my doorstep, and he brought me flowers. Michalinka, I am so sorry. I want you to know, I want you to know. What? Michal, it's me. Come on, I know. We have a problem. I want to solve that problem. That's right. You have a problem. Society has a problem. And you know something? I have a problem too. And I don't know about you, and I definitely can't change society. But I have a meeting with Iris, the social worker, so you have to leave now. And I watched him leave. And I thought about the new life that was growing inside me. Life is so precious and so short, and we get one chance to live it. We should live it well. And love shouldn't hurt. Love should not hurt.
You're muted, Naomi.
Naomi, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Thank you.
Naomi?
I'm talking and talking. I'm sorry. Sorry, that's such a rookie mistake. Hello, everybody. Take a breath. That's a lot to take in. It's a lot to watch. I want to say again that if this triggered anything for anyone, if you are feeling something, if you are not safe, in the chat, there are numbers of hotlines. There are numbers where you can get help. No one needs to be alone. Your voice matters. You matter. So pick up the phone. If you can't do that, send an email, and just know that we see you, although I can't really see you on the screen, but I see you in my heart. So my name is Naomi Ackerman. And if you noticed, the clip that you saw was produced by the Israeli television, kind of sad, 18 years ago. That's not sad, but the child who I'm pregnant with actually left, already graduated high school. And I have been doing this piece and performing this piece for over 20 years. 20 years ago, I was approached by the Ministry of Welfare in Israel to create a show that told the story of an abused woman. And I went as an actress to interview women with the very arrogant thought that many people have, oh, that could never happen to me. And I interviewed dozens of women. And upon hearing each of their stories, not only did I realize that it could happen to me, I realized that it could happen to any of us, because any of us can be made to second guess ourselves. Any of us can be made to feel small. Any of us, many of us, if not all of us, want to be loved, want to be seen. And what started off as a one-time kind of adventure, because I was commissioned to write a 10-minute piece for a conference for the Ministry of Welfare, ended up turning into a 50-minute show, which, by the way, what you saw today was just an abbreviated version, and started for me an incredible journey of understanding, exploring, fighting, and speaking out loud for justice for women, for men, and for victims of domestic violence. And, you know, there's so many things that I can share about the journey that I've had, because I've been performing this piece for 25 years. I've had the privilege to perform globally in many different places, in India, in Israel, New Zealand, South Africa, America. And what the common denominator is that everywhere people find themselves in these situations that is not their fault and that they are stuck in. And what we want to say today, and what we are here for today, is to say that this can stop. And not only can it stop, together we have to make it stop. So I am going to stop talking, and I have the privilege to have with me today on this panel Rabbi Stephen Carr Rubin and Judy Vaughn. I am not going to say out loud their beautiful and illustrious bios. They're going to magically, by the beautiful team from LMU, pop up on your chats so that you can see each one of them, what they have done and where they have been. But both of these wonderful people are people, clergy, and represent faiths. And what I've learned in the last 25 years doing this show is that you need a lot of faith to be able to be a change maker. You need a lot of faith to change your own life. And you need a lot of faith to be able to get out of an abusive relationship. And what I know to be true is that for many of us, and for many of the women and men that I interviewed, faith sometimes becomes very complicated. And it becomes complicated in how we judge ourselves, in our self-worth. So what I want to put out to our two panelists is really, what is the role of religion in teaching us about relationships? And what is the role in religion in assisting and supporting us? It's actually like a two-part question, in supporting us of getting out of an abusive relationship. And before I'm gonna pass it on to you, Judy, I just want to also tell everybody who's watching, while we are speaking, please feel free to put questions, comments, and remarks in the chat, and we will absolutely pay attention to them and relate to them afterwards. So Judy, I'm going to pass the mic to you first and let you answer the role of religion in teaching relationships and in combating domestic violence?
Well, first, I want to say, Naomi, thank you for that piece. I'm trying to breathe. It's so powerful and it captures so many aspects of the reality. I've had the privilege of working first at House of Ruth in East LA for a number of years, but have been at Alexandria House since its founding in 1996. Approximately 85% of the women who have gone through our program have experienced some form of violence, often domestic violence. And as I was watching it, their faces that have taught me so much just came before my eyes, and I learned courage and resilience and how to be a loving person truly by my life experiences. So, but thank you for capturing that, and it's really an honor to be here and be part of this panel. What you said about religion really speaks to me. I grew up at a family where we were told we could be anything that we could be, and I'm a cultural Catholic is how I describe myself, but quickly I learned that's not accurate because of course women can't be priests. I learned that early on. I'm 76, let's just put it out there. So I've seen a lot of changes. But one of the things that I've come to understand is very often the God that is presented is not a God that I relate to. An institution or religion has to look seriously of the messages that are being preached. Because as you indicate, very often, at least again, and I'm speaking out of my own tradition, my own life experience, it's been religion who have promoted, women being subservient, and also who a woman ought to be. You refer a lot to the good girl or the good woman and what that looks like and how you ought to live your life. And so those are some of the messages that when women come and are feeling so bad about themselves, not only because of what has happened in their relationship, but because they feel they have been abandoned by a God, feel that they are going to be punished by that God. It's really trying to hold up another perspective and another belief system, because however you view Jesus, I think the message of a beloved community is so antithetical to what people are often taught in terms of what a hierarchical, all-powerful God is. And so here, very practically at Alexandria House, we're an all-women staff. It's an all-women board. We do have men that are sort of associates also come to volunteer to demonstrate. There really are men that don't hit women. There really are, that exist. But really to try the very best we can to demonstrate a vision of what we're all called to be together. And that's a beloved community, strong together, supportive of each other in a world, hopefully, where people understand exactly what you said. And you waited to hear the answer from your dad. Nobody deserves to be hit. Just sort of the last thing, because I know we have a conversation we want to get started, but the last thing I really wanted to share, and I was struck what you said, it couldn't happen to me. My mom and dad were married for 61 years and were each other's best friends. And so I probably would fall in that category of that. It couldn't happen to me. And I have a sister who survived something that did happen to her in terms of abuse. But the other reality that I find women here who have come out of generations of abusive relationships where, of course, it will happen to me is more their perspective. I remember early on in 1982, a woman, her name was Ruby, did not believe me when I said my dad didn't hit my mom. She said, "You just don't see it. You just don't know it. You don't understand. this is how it is. And just recently, I was with a woman who was able to celebrate the fact that she had broken out of this cycle of DV that had been in her family for generations. So it's so rampant in our society and in our world. I am just so appreciative to you for having this conversation today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so sad that I can't see the faces of the people who are with us.
Yeah.
And I please encourage you to write comments, write questions. We want to answer your questions. We want to respond to your questions. There are no bad questions. We really, you have a panel here of people who have been walking the walk and working in this work. And we really would love this to be a vibrant conversation. So I am going to pass the microphone to my friend and mentor and wonderful champion of, I don't know if you can say champion of domestic violence, but someone who has been fighting this fight for a very long time, Rabbi Stephen Carr-Rubin. Again, what is the role of religion in teaching relationships and in supporting the fight of this? I used to always say that domestic violence was a pandemic, and that was before this pandemic. So I don't think I can use that language anymore, but it is an epidemic and it is happening. And sadly, because of COVID, it has gotten much, much worse. And everybody can figure out why. If you're in an abusive relationship and you're stuck in your house, clearly you have nowhere to go, figuratively and in reality. So again, please comment, ask questions, and Rabbi Rubin, I'm passing the microphone to you.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say, no matter how many times I've seen you do that, I cry every time I'm watching that. It's like I can't stop crying for all of the people in the world who experience what you so beautifully and powerfully dramatize in that one woman show. I grew up with 3 sisters and a mother. I'm the only boy, privileged to be the only boy. But part of growing up with all of those females in my house was a kind of ongoing lesson about the difference between being me and being them in the most sort of almost mundane, simplest ways. That is, I never think twice about where I park in a parking lot, and all my sisters did every time they drove into a parking lot, looked around, where am I going to park? What's the safest place for me to be? And a whole host of other things that reflected as I was growing up and had them as my teachers in the inherent vulnerability of women in our society as a whole. I've been a rabbi for 45 years, and I will tell you that the basic information about domestic violence, I mean, the most basic things, that domestic violence is the leading cause of injury for women in America, that most girls and women who are victims never tell anyone, that it's overwhelmingly about power and control and not about sex, that it affects every population, all of us, regardless of gender and regardless of religion and regardless of race and regardless of age and regardless of socioeconomic class. As Judy said, and as you said, it can and does happen to anyone, in whoever they are. And that, I don't know what exactly the statistic is today, but traditionally it's been probably 1 in 3 women have experienced some kind of abuse of some kind of a relationship. And to think about the, 5 to 10 million perhaps children who witness domestic violence in their own homes, and how men who witness domestic violence as they grew up are twice as likely to grow up and be abusive because that's the role model that they saw, similar to what Judy shared about someone saying that they couldn't believe that someone's husband didn't hit them. And I realized that my own upbringing and my own religious training was kind of in conflict with itself, because my training was based upon the very beginning of the Bible, of the first thing we learned about human beings in the Bible is that we claim that every human being is created in Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, and therefore every human being has fundamental spiritual self-worth. I mean, that's the religious context in which I encounter people, that it doesn't say except. Every human being is made in the image of God, except, people who speak this language, or people who are this color, or people who are this gender. That was my attitude about what religion should be. And then I realized, as I experienced being a rabbi in congregations, that in fact, it's congregations and it's clergy who so often are so focused on what they consider to be a more important value than individual safety and self-worth, which is keeping families together, that clergy so often act exactly in the opposite way that they're supposed to. In Jewish communities, we have this concept called, shalom bayit, peace in the home. And so often, out of the thousands of years of Jewish history and Jewish tradition, it was in fact rabbis and clergy who were so focused on that they would do anything to keep families together and do exactly the wrong thing. Someone came to them, a woman came to them, evidencing some kind of abusive experience. They would then do couples counseling, or they would bring them together, and they would make any excuse they could to try to keep them together, rather than what was necessary, which was that woman in your play who gave you her number and said, "I believe you, and call me." But that, in fact, is changing. In part, it's changing because I'll just give you the Jewish version. In every rabbinic seminary today, at least half, and in most more than half, of the students who are going to be rabbis are women. That's changing already. The complexity and the relationships, the experiences, and the expectations of what it means to be a clergy, a rabbi in a community. And there are people showing up, like the work that you're doing, the work that I created this project called Home Shalom, which is really literally a play on Shalom Bayit, Home Shalom, because so we could address the issues of domestic violence and work with teens, creating healthy relationship workshops for teens and for college students, because we recognize, and I recognize from a religious perspective, that they aren't getting this kind of training. They aren't having places where they can have these kinds of conversations in an open, ongoing, interactive way to learn what is a healthy relationship, what are boundaries, what does consent mean, what are those things. It's not a natural part of how we train our kids, even in our religious institutions, which is what it should be. So to me, the hallmarks of what it means to respond in a religious, spiritual way is to take those teachings from our own ancient traditions that remind us, don't stand idly by the blood of your neighbor in Leviticus, which to me means there's no such thing as a innocent bystander, because if you're standing by, you're not innocent. That our challenge as a religious people is to be involved in people's lives, is to do what we can to uplift them, to have them look in the mirror and see what you had such a hard time as Michal in that place seeing, which is your own holiness and your own self-worth. That's our job as clergy. So I can talk for hours.
Thank you. No, that's good. I can listen forever. So thank you both for that first question. I'm gonna look at the chat because there's some questions there. And actually the first question and comment was from Rabbi Zach, who I want to take this moment to actually thank Rabbi Zach for bringing me this show, Rabbi Reuben, Judy, you came through a different, I think through Stephanie, but bringing us to the center of reconciliation and justice, and for Stephanie Miha for having us here and seeing this issue as a justice issue, because not everybody sees it like that. This is a social justice issue. The issue of interpersonal relationship violence, the issue of women who are in domestic violence situations, or men, because it does happen to men, is a social justice issue. So I am so grateful that you wanted us to come here and that you hosted us in this conference and thought that it was important to have this conversation, because a lot of times people think that this is just, it's just the business of the people who are in that relationship. And that leads me into the comment that Rabbi Zach asked, how can, I'm just gonna pulled it up. What can students do to be better allies for themselves and loved ones? And here's the thing, we all have to be better allies. The first thing is to believe what people tell us. Number two, not to tell people what they need to do, but just tell them that they're wonderful and tell them that that we see them and how can we help them. Our job is not to tell them what to do, but ask how we can support them. Because so many times I've even been in that situation where people, not now, but early on when I was dating, oh, he's horrible, you should leave him, or you should be with him, or she shouldn't be with him. That's not our job. Our job is to say, you are wonderful, and I see you're unhappy. How can I help you? Also, you need to be aware that these are dangerous relationships. For a woman just to get up and leave, she could be putting herself in critical danger. It is known and statistically known that actually most women, or and I keep saying or men or transgender. I mean, we have this notion that it just happens to women, but this happens in all relationships, not only to women, but in most relationships, when finally or when the victim decides to leave, that is when they're the most vulnerable because their perpetrator feels like there's nothing to lose. And we have to be really careful that we're setting up as an ally, that we are supporting a safe exit. And that's what there are professional people for. And there are hotlines, there are shelters, there are homes, and there are professionals that can assess what is the right next move to do. How should the move happen? And our job, and I'm going to say it, and I love Rabbi Zach that you asked allies to ourselves. To ourselves is believe exactly what Rabbi Rubin said, that we are worthy than something better. This is not a death sentence. It is not, you're not stuck for life. And I can tell you, I have been doing this show for 25 years. I have seen people get out of relationships, horrible relationships that seemed like the deadest of ends, and have a whole new chapter and a new life and children and a whole new story. So the book is not over with one page or one story. And as allies, we have to believe, we have to support, and we have to educate ourselves. Give them the phone numbers, give them the information, and be present. And that's really hard. And be present if they're not doing what you want them to do. If you see someone who's in an abusive relationship and you're like, hey, I'm worried about you, you need to get help, and they don't get help, then you come tomorrow and you say, how can I help you? And you don't give up on them, and you wait patiently when they're ready to get that help. So that's number one, and just kind of answering that question. And I really, again, am so grateful for this opportunity to be here and for this opportunity to have this conversation. Another question, and actually this is from Stephanie, and I love this question. You have interviewed a lot of women who are abuse survivors. Do you have red flag list that you can share with us? So I'm going to share some red flags, and then I'm going to pass this to Judy and Rabbi Rubin to also share some red flags, because I'm sure that you will have what to say. I think the first thing is how you feel. You know, we at the Advot Project in Home Shalom have an exercise that we do with teens about listening to your inner voice. So many women that I interviewed said, I knew it from the beginning. And when I want to invite everybody, and as allies and maybe as victims or people who know people, is that when you feel something, honor that, honor the feeling. If you are not, pay attention. The red flags are when you're getting blamed for something you didn't do, anger that keeps happening and keeps happening. Another really important red flag is that if you tell someone that they hurt you or that you don't like something and they say sorry but do it again tomorrow, that's a big flag. That's a red flag. Pay attention to how your partner is when you're in a public space. Are they nice to the servers? Are they nice to the valet parking? Are they nice to your friends? And that's kind of a double-edged one, because sometimes they'll be really nice to your friends, but behind the closed doors, to you, they're not so nice. Pay attention to that. because everybody is worthy of feeling amazing. So I'm going to kind of go back and then I'm going to, Judy, pass it to you. Listen to your inner voice. Pay attention to blame, anger, and misplaced anger. Notice how they're behaving in public and how they're behaving behind closed doors. Notice how they treat other people. And most of all, notice how they're treating you. So, Judy, do you have any red flags to add to that? And then Rabbi Rubin will come to you.
I would just, and it's sort of intensifying what you just said, Naomi. And then
Please.
if it's all right, I wanted to go back really quickly to one thing Rabbi Stephen said,
Of course.
and a comment about being allies, just really quickly. But I want to do the red flag thing. And I remember hearing this and learning this, and I believe it's true, is you look for red flags, you follow your instinct from the very beginning, because usually at the beginning of a relationship, everybody's on their best behavior. So if you are hesitant about a behavior, you can pretty well guess it will escalate. Yeah. And to recognize that before there is the emotional, sexual connection that will make it harder to get out. I want to pass it on to Rabbi Stephen for the red flags, and then I would like to come back to one thing you said, Stephen, and also the idea about being an ally.
Okay. Well, actually the red flags are pretty obvious when you think about it, because what you need to ask yourself is, does the person you're in a relationship with get extremely jealous or possessive? Do they accuse you of things? Listen to Naomi's one woman show, how Michal was talking about what was going on in her relationship. Are they constantly checking on you in this day and age? It's like, are you getting 20 texts a day? Where are you? Where are you? What are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you? What are you doing? Because fundamentally, the red flag of all red flags is that domestic abuse, interpersonal abuse, is about power and control. So to the degree that you are in a relationship where you feel someone is constantly checking to exert their control over who you see, what you do, where you go, how you dress, any of those, where you eat, those are the red flags. And in any checklist that you were going to check, apart from the obvious of, are they hitting you? I mean, are they getting physical with you and then apologizing? Are they, because there's a cycle of abuse that, all of us who work with abuse understand. They have big mood swings. Do they put you down and criticize you and diminish you in any way? All of those are sort of the obvious red flags that we tend to dismiss because, as Michal said in this play, that he was so charming and wonderful the rest of the time. When he wasn't a monster, he was so fantastic, because psychopaths are that way. When he's that way. So, that's my quick list of red flags. Judy,
and I want to come back to you, Judy, but I also have something, and I want to say that what is astounding to me, 25 years later, 2,000 shows later, 7 continents, many states, cities, from slums in Mumbai to mansions in Bel Air. It's really what Rabbi Rubin said. It's power and control. And you can be rich, you can be poor, you can be green, blue, yellow, whatever color. It really doesn't matter. And it's interesting that everywhere I am in the world, everybody likes to point out, oh, well, here it's this and this and that, but over there, it's really, really bad. And everywhere this is happening. The only thing that stopped me for a while doing this show was the pandemic. I am waiting for a country to say, we don't need you to come to our country because this doesn't happen here. So this issue of power and control is so prevalent everywhere. And that's what we need to be paying attention to. That's a really, really big flag. Yeah. And what I also want to just always add, no shame. There should never be shame. If you slid into this, if you were in it, if you are in it, there's no shame. You should not have an iota of shame. Reach out, get help, and heal. and don't stay stuck because you're embarrassed, because this happens. I can tell you many celebrities, famous people, smart people. I interviewed for this show a woman who was a clinical psychologist who treated women of domestic violence. Life is complicated and we are complex emotional beings. You're allowed to make a mistake. You're allowed to believe. You're allowed to be charmed. And the biggest red flag, which isn't really a red flag, is don't be ashamed and don't succumb to shame. So, Judy, you wanted to talk about allies.
Um, one of the realities, and I was just really struck by what you were saying, Naomi, because of a conversation I had just last night with one of the women who was here with so much shame and how could this happen to me again? So this is sort of takes it down a little bit different path, but also I wanted to thank you when you talked about the family, Stephen, because so many women will say that I've heard, but you know, I grew up in a one-parent family, and I want my kid to know their dad. And I think you pointed to that. You know, what you don't want is your child to witness such violence. And you know, we've dealt with kids that are just so angry at seeing someone abuse their mom, but at the same time have learned the behaviors and will say some of the same things that the person who was battering was saying as their dad was hitting their mom. So I think there's a lot of talk about trauma-informed care. And one of the really important things is we don't know what is the triggers. You were given a bouquet of flowers and it triggered you back to that's what he always brought. And so thinking about how you interact with people, it's traumatic, and to be aware that different things may trigger, and it gives you a clue of maybe an entrance into how a deeper conversation about what's going on. But that's sort of to the side. I just wanted to say, you know, a lot of people will ask, you know, why did you go back? I think it's a larger context we have to pay attention to, and it's a way to be an ally. There's just not enough resources. There's not enough DV shelters. There's not enough homeless shelters. Right now, there's a coalition bringing together those two realities because there's not enough places. Sometimes one of the requirements is that you've done a police report, or you have to demonstrate that you have been hit, that you're in fear of your life to get into a shelter. And so women who have the courage to get out of the situation before they're killed or before they're badly hurt and injured, they try to find a place and can't find a place, and end up maybe thinking, well, that wasn't so bad.
You froze.
Oh no. Oh my gosh, that's so sad. Hopefully she will come back. I'm gonna kind of piggyback and piggytail on that piggyback.
Piggyback.
The question of why, you know, why did she stay? There's also the flip question, why didn't she leave? And I find myself, who's been doing this work for almost 3 decades, I'll read this horrible story, and that's the first thing that jumps into all of our heads. Why didn't she leave? And I want us to change that narrative. And why did the perpetrator use violence? Why isn't that the first question? Why isn't the first question, why was violence used? And it's I think as an ally, that question, why didn't they leave, or why did they stay, or why did they let it happen? Nobody lets it happen. It happens because of a million different reasons. And the questions that we ask ourselves and the questions that we ask the victims should be they should be, sorry about that, they should be informed, and they should be gentle, and they shouldn't be judging. And what I learned in this journey is that there really is no place for judgment, because all of us all of us, how many times have somebody did something to you, you didn't say anything, or you just let it slide, and then you walk away and like, oh, I should have said this, oh, I should have done that. We all do that. And anybody who doesn't, says they don't, I don't believe you. So this judgment that we have on why did a person stay, why did they marry them, why didn't they leave, those aren't questions that are relevant. What's
Right.
relevant is how do we help. What's relevant is how do we change society? What's relevant is how do we create spaces for healing? How do we raise resources so that there aren't only 7, 8, 10, 12 beds in a shelter, but there's 10 shelters with 70 beds? And those are the questions that we should be asking. And again, what I love about this being part of this conference on justice, how do we, as champions of social justice, create an environment where if you are in this type of relationship, communities and society will escort you out and support you until you heal and can move on? Because that's the question that should we be asking. What is our job in this? And how can we be champions of healing and champions of change and champions of justice? Because no one, and it doesn't matter what they did, and that's literally from the play, nobody deserves this. And it doesn't matter if you made a mistake, if you crashed the car, if you spent money, if you lost the credit card, it doesn't matter. And
I think,
that's the conversation.
I
Yeah.
think one of the important things to remember is that life's messy and relationships are complicated. And it's never as easy as, well, I should do that and then I'll automatically do it, you know. And even asking the question is a form of blaming the victim. You know, why didn't you leave acts as sounds as if it's your fault that you're being abused. And it's never your fault when you're being abused. It's the abuser's fault when you're being abused. So part of what we need to do, what it means to be allies, what it means to stand up both first for yourself, I agree 100%, and then for other people, is to do what we can to create a community where people feel that there are places they can go to get support, to be supported, to hear that, you know, Jewish tradition teaches us that one who can protest and doesn't is an accomplice in the act. And it's as if we are all accomplices in the act of the kind of abuse that goes on in our society simply by not doing everything we can to let our voices be heard and create public places where people can show up. I think every synagogue, I mean, part of my goal is that every synagogue and every church declares itself a safe sanctuary from domestic violence, so that people see those, literally their sanctuaries, as real sanctuaries where they really can go and show up and talk to the clergy person. And I was just on a training with Jewish Family Service this morning, training people who work in this. And one of the things that I said to all of the trainees, and I'll say it to those who are watching today, is those of you who care about this issue and who are involved in all about this issue, one of the ways to be allies, certainly from the religious perspective, religious community perspective, is to go to your own clergy person and encourage her or him to speak about this issue. All of the studies show that when a minister, a priest, a rabbi speaks about domestic violence from the pulpit, it opens up the space for people who are victims to come to them, to show up. And when they don't, it doesn't, because it's a safety issue. That, you know, if you don't feel that it's going to be a safe thing to go to your clergy, you're not going to show up. And to have the kind of information and referrals, even that we put in the chat for you, should be in every church, should be in every religious institution, should be in every synagogue. And the more all of us can be allies in encouraging people who are leaders, spiritual leaders of individual congregations and communities, to speak about this, to have material out in the lobby when people are going back in person, to have them in their bulletins, to communicate the resources that are available. That's what will help to create a different atmosphere altogether in our society that recognizes the victimization that takes place and creates the opportunity for people to get help. Judy, we're happy you're back.
We're so happy you're back. We got so
I'm so
worried.
Welcome to
right.
my world. Anyway, thank you. I'm so sorry because I didn't want to miss a minute of it. Thank you so much.
Well, we cut you off, but I'm not sure where you were when we cut you off, when you cut yourself off, but
Yeah,
okay.
I want,
then away.
I'm gonna come back to you in a second. I want to say that really the most important, the most important part is to talk about this. You know, what you don't talk about does happen. And the more we talk about it, and the more we have these discussions, and we have open discussions, particularly with youth and college students. We love bringing this to colleges
Hmm.
where people are starting dating and meeting you know, being in relationships, and make sure that there's an understanding of what a healthy relationship is, but more important, not to be okay when it's unhealthy,
Right.
and for us to be having conversations like today. And we really want to answer questions, and we still have some time. If there's comments, questions, if someone wants to say something, if someone wants to ask something. I'm also going to say that this presentation was originally going to be in person, so we also allotted a little bit more time because the live presentation is longer than the video. I'm absolutely not pregnant anymore, so that's fine. You should just know that. But we are going to come back to LMU and do it, and we just stay tuned, and we will tell you about it. But I really want to say that I think it's not only shame. When we talk about shame, and maybe Judy, that'll bring you back to what you were talking about before. It's not only just shame of the victims. It's like we're not allowed and we're not supposed to talk about things that aren't good. And we're not supposed to talk about when a relationship, you know, we're supposed to talk about the great date and the getting married and everything. And it's also okay to say, oh, it didn't hit it off. It didn't work out. I didn't feel good in there. And I want to encourage us not to be afraid to talk about the things that aren't great. Because as Rabbi Rubin said, life is messy. There are many days that aren't great. There are lots of relationships that aren't great. And let's not make that what binds us, but what makes us be in community and figure out how to navigate the relationships. And all relationships get hard. That doesn't mean a relationship is abusive. You know, I perform in a lot of different places, and a lot of times I talk to younger, you know, I've started some, you know, and people ask me what has changed in the 25 years that I've been doing this show, and sadly not a lot. But what has changed is that we are talking about it a little bit more. And no, that's not sadly, that's great. The sadly is that the age that I'm performing for is younger and younger. And we are seeing younger and younger individuals engaging in abusive relationships. And that means we have a lot of work for us to do to make sure that that's not happening. So that's something that's really important to me. I know Judy, we lost you and you were in the middle, and probably you have a lot more to say, so I want to pass it on to you. And I'm just going to encourage, I hate that I can't see the faces of the 27 people, and there were 38, 39 at one point. I'm seeing the comments. I'm not that talented that I can see the comments, talk, and respond at the same time. So I will respond privately to some people who I know who've commented. But please, there are no wrong answers. There are no wrong questions. There are no wrong comments. I also love criticism. So bring it on. Bevakasha, they say in Hebrew, please. And now Judy.
Seriously, I was so sad to miss out on any of this. Something you just said, Naomi, and as part of the program here, to speak up and to be willing to share. You know, you can imagine folks who come here are coming out of really difficult and complicated life experiences. They're struggling economically, facing homelessness, wanting to protect their kids. But one other part of our program is every other week we have a support group, and it's to enable women who come from different life experiences really to share some of their story as much as they're comfortable sharing, and be supportive of each other. And one of the beautiful things about that is to watch as people come to know each other, of what feminist theologian Sheila Collins calls the aha moment, when all of a sudden what you're saying is resonating with what I'm saying, and we have a shared experience, regardless of our differences in culture, language, life experiences. It's that connecting moment when we can learn from each other, support each other, and hopefully diminish some of the shame that has been dumped on people.
Judy, someone wrote in the chat, they asked if you could talk more about she wrote red tape, but probably meant red signs that you mentioned, and maybe talk a little bit more about the services of Alexandria House, please.
Sure.
That was a question in the chat.
Yeah. So we try to make, let's see where to go with this. I'm trying to keep it focused. We try to do, because we are for women and children, and we try to make the place as home-like as possible. We also believe in the possibility of community, believe it's really the care and support and love for each other is something that in every religious tradition, really, if you look to the core, is what you can find. So we also have, as part of our services, and it's mandated, everyone has their own therapist, counselor. For those who hesitate to have counseling, for whatever reason, we just say you can go as deep or as shallow as you would like, but everybody needs somebody they can emote to and to share with. That's just some of the services. We have childcare on site, but all of our childcare providers were trained through the center. It used to be called, now it's Echo Center, but the Center for Nonviolent Parenting and Education, to really help from early on to create other possibilities in terms of relationships, to see that there's other ways of being together. I wanted to go back when I disappeared into cyberspace or the cloud. There's something in California that's called failure to protect. And moms who have kids who are also surviving domestic violence, partner abuse, are very scared that if DCFS is called, if the police is called, there's a likelihood that their child will be taken away from them. It has happened over and over and over again. And that's simply something that has to be addressed. It's doing double traumatizing for somebody who's not only survived being hit and abused, but then having their child taken away, and in the foster care system, which really does not help anybody. Right. So if that's something people can just be aware of, it's one of the things we're asking to get changed. Is we want kids protected. That's not the case, but to take a child away because the mom is trying to survive, and if anybody calls the police and then you end up losing your kid, it makes women hesitate to really speak out. So what are some of the obstacles that do that? And I was struck as you were doing the play, Naomi, there's so much is still, we can see a lot of movement in terms of changes, in terms of stereotypes about what a good woman ought to be. But we need to address, women speak up, women are strong, women are caring. It's been so much emphasis, and I'm not downplaying it, on being loving. And yes, we all have a call to be loving, but part of that is loving yourself, and forgiving, somehow being the heart of the home. A lot of the things that we were taught, and again, I go way back, but we were taught really helps to perpetuate a kind of dominant subordinate kind of relationship between men and women. And we just have to look at that and talk about it.
I wanna add to that, just kind of, we gravitate to what we need to teach the girls. And I can say, as a mom of 3 girls, I gravitate to that, but we also have to constantly remember what we're teaching the boys. And Rabbi Rubin and I, through our work in my organization, the Advot Project and Home Shalom, we actually had the privilege, we have these teen cohorts where we talk about healthy relationships and relationship building and communication. And we had an all male identifying cohort. And it was a really fascinating experience to just work with the boys on their self-worth, on their challenges in relationships. So what we need to be doing is teaching both boys and girls and men and women what is, and again, it just comes back to the Center for Reconciliation and Justice. What is equality? What is a shared, and equality doesn't mean we do the same thing. It means that we respect each other and that one person does what they do and the other person does what they do, and we see each other, and no one is less and no one is more. And these are the lessons that we need to be raising our children with, that we need to be promoting in society. And we have to be paying attention to what's in social media, what's on TV. And there's so much talk about that, but how are we having these discussions of the good girls, the bad boys, and all of that is part of this equation. And that too, by the way, is global. And this is, this is happening everywhere. And these are conversations that we know about, but they're not happening at the depth that we need them to be happening. And that's my invitation to everyone who's here today, is have these conversations with your cousins, with your boys, with your sons, with your daughters, with your girls. Talk about, what does a relationship need to look like? What do you want in a relationship? Have the conversations. Don't assume that people know, and don't assume that they know, and let them dream of what they want to have. And I really want to encourage that in whatever setting you are. And you don't have to be a teacher, you don't have to be a parent, but we're always surrounded by people. Have these conversations. Have these conversations with yourself and think about, how do you want to feel? And make sure that you have that, because that's what it's about.
I want to thank you for that. And you reminded me, a number of years ago, we started From Boys to Men group, because we had a number of preteen boys living here. We're one of the shelters that will take moms with older boys. And they were struggling and didn't have role models and didn't know what to do with their feelings. And so that group, which was an all boys group, had a chance to really interact with each other and learn different models and ways of being together. It's just really so important. And we want to move towards equality, but it's also looking at how equity plays into that, and that some folks, in fact, because of obstacles, whether it be classism, racism, go down the list, really need the support and the courage, the support and the resources to move to a place that we can enter into relationships of true equality where power is shared.
Amen. Amen. That's what I was saying. So we have about 4 or 5 more minutes. I just want to ask again and open, if you have a question, if you have a comment, if you have a request. I also want to say that what I hate about Zoom is that when it's over, everybody disappears. And usually when we have the presentation, we can linger, we can talk, we can support.
We'll come back in person and then they can show up.
Yeah, so when we come in person, one invite, but what I want to say is that when this screen goes dark, if you are feeling alone, if this is triggering things, I'm going to just say again, there are hotlines, there are numbers. Please don't sit in the dark by yourself. Reach out. I know that for some people, this is a very hard show to watch. It triggers things. So just pick up the phone. The hotlines are anonymous. You don't even have to say your name. Pick up the phone, share what you're feeling. You can say, I just saw a show, such a great actress. No, I have to say, I'm kidding. But I just saw this show. It's triggering things. Talk about it. I want to invite everybody. If one thing comes out of this show is to shed your shame and take a breath and talk about this. And I worry, and I'm feeling anxiety, because I feel bad that we're gonna end this and the screen is gonna go dark, and I do not want anybody to feel like they have to be in darkness. So please take a moment, scroll up in the comments. Stephanie put a lot of resources. Some of those resources are 24 hours. I think what they call the SPS, the Student Psychology Services. I don't remember if it's 24 hours, but that's on campus. You are not alone. and you should not feel like you're alone, and you are not, you might be stuck right now, but that's not forever. And I have seen, I am not a survivor myself, but I know, Judy, you have seen many, I have seen many. Rabbi Rubin, you can get out of this, you can get help, and you do not need, you are worthy, and you matter so much. So that's kind of a note that I want to end it on, but I'm going to also look and see if there are any more comments.
I also just want to say that the very fact that this program is being presented by LMU, Rabbi Zach and Stephanie and people who are working at LMU are doing this and want to bring us to do it live, should tell everybody who's here, who's a student at LMU, that there is obviously support here if they reach out, that there are people who care, who think of this as justice, as an issue of personal justice and value and self-worth. And please reach out if you're in need, or to any of us as well, frankly. And I appreciate the fact that we were able to be here sharing this with everybody today.
So really, Rabbi Zach was the connection that brought us. So I know he's here because he's, I see him typing. Thank you, Rabbi Zach. Thank you for bringing us. He brought us before the pandemic, and brought a lot of really good food. Like, forget us, he brought like great food. So we know your heart is in the right place, and it is really, and Stephanie, you have been a wonderful person to work with. We really appreciate you. And I appreciate this platform. And I really appreciate LMU, again, seeing this topic as an important part of a conference on social justice. And my prayer is that other colleges do the same, and that, you know, I've had the privilege to be in many churches and synagogues, but we kind of go in waves, and we need to kind of get back on the wave of talking about this and touching it, because what we do know is that the pandemic has really spiked up the numbers of domestic violence. And now that things, well, they're kind of opening up, well, not really, because we're here on Zoom still, but that we're all, again, talking about this, touching it, and not being ashamed or afraid. So I don't know if Rabbi Rubin or Judy, you want any last words?
Judy?
You know, a long time ago, there was a movie that Thelma and Louise, and they ended up ending it with the women driving over into the Grand Canyon. Many people praised that movie, but a number of us felt just dismayed that they didn't see that there were other options. And what you're doing, Naomi, and thank you, Rabbi Stephen, just for the opportunity to meet you, is to letting people know that there's a way out that's not death dealing, either by suicide, which was a part also of what you presented, Naomi, or by being killed. So we need each other. If the statistic is true, 1 out of 3, that means look around you. If you're in a group, there's somebody there that is dealing with this issue. And I just feel very honored and present in solidarity with all the women who have touched my life and taught me so much. So thank you for the invitation to be a part of it.
Thank you. And I always end, you know, and I get emotional every time for the last 25 years. They say that people who are in abusive relationships are weak, or have no personality, or are suckers. And what I know to be true is that the people and the women that I interviewed, just like you, Judy, have made me a stronger human being. I have met the most beautiful, forgiving, just lovely human beings that believed that someone could change, that believed that things would get better, and that really are not so many stereotypes that we have. And it is an honor for me to be the voice for so many women who I interviewed who can't be with us, and they're always with me. They have been with me for 25 years. We're kind of buddies already because we've traveled all over the world. And I am just going to say one last time, no shame and so much possibility. and you can always make a change. It's not going to be easy. And it might not be exactly what you want in the beginning, but it is possible. And if this panel, and if today teaches us anything, is that change is possible. And I don't believe it, I know it because I've seen it. So I so appreciate everybody who gave from their time. I hope while you were watching, you ate some dinner. And if you didn't, you should go have dinner right now. And when we come in person, bring 2 friends. So instead of 30 people, we have 90. Thank you. Clearly, math is not my strong point. So we hope that when we come to the campus, we have at least 90 people in the audience, because here's the thing. My organization is called the Advot Project, ADVOT. Adva means ripple in Hebrew. There is always a ripple effect. So if each one of you brings 1 person to the show, that's 1 more person who will learn about this, who will advocate for this, who will make the world a better place. So thank you again, Stephanie, Rabbi Zach, for making this happen. Thank you, Ava, for being our tech person. Those are the 2 boxes that you guys are seeing. And thank you for everybody who gave us from your time tonight to be here. And Rabbi Rubin, who is my mentor, who I love dearly, thank you for being with me on this journey. And Judy, you're now part of the family. So you're coming with us everywhere. Now that we've met you, we're taking the show on the road. So thank you.
Anyway, good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night. Be safe. Bye.